Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are doing something a little different. We are essentially performing an
A bit grim to start, but,
Yeah.
well, given the subject matter, I think that is entirely appropriate.
We are looking at a body that just washed up on the shores of Hollywood over the Valentine's Day weekend. It is the new, very loud, very controversial film adaptation of Wuthering Heights. And looking at the stack of source sent over.
Quite a pile.
I mean, we are talking about a movie starring Margot Robbie, arguably the biggest female star in the world right now after Barbie and Jacob Elordi, he's basically the internet's boyfriend.
He is. And
Yeah.
on paper, this should have been the easiest slam dunk in the world.
Right.
You take a literary classic that everyone knows, you add two of the most beautiful people on the planet, and you release it on the most romantic weekend of the year. It's a formula that, it writes itself.
It should have printed money, and yet the headlines in this pile are absolute.
They're rough.
I'm seeing words like disaster, flop, misguided, and this one's my personal favorite from a critic review. A beautiful, empty void.
Ooh, that one hurt.
It does. But before we get into the artistic critique, and we will talk about the dog collar thing, because I have to know what is happening there.
We have to.
I want to look at the money, because the numbers tell a story that the marketing posters didn't.
They certainly do.
Yeah.
And to understand why this is being labeled a disaster, despite making millions of dollars, we have to do a little Hollywood Math 101.
Okay, lay it on me. I'm looking at the box office charts right now. The movie made about $34.8 million domestically in its opening.
Right, over the 3-day weekend.
Now, to me, a regular person who doesn't run a movie studio, $34 million sounds like a lot of money for a weekend.
It does.
If I made that in a weekend, I'd be gone. I'd retire.
It sounds like a lot. And honestly, for a mid-budget horror movie or, a small indie drama, popping champagne corks would be the appropriate response. But in the blockbuster game, everything is relative to the price tag. The reported production budget for this version of Wuthering Heights was somewhere between $80 and $90 million.
80 to 90. Okay, so let's just call it $90 million to make. They made roughly $82 million globally in the first weekend.
Correct.
So the optimistic headline I saw on Twitter was, hey, they almost made their money back in 3 days. They're almost at the break-even point.
And that is the trap. That's the trap everyone falls into. It is the sticker price fallacy.
Okay.
If you walk away with nothing else from the business side of this deep dive, remember this. The production budget is just the down payment.
Break that down for me. Where is the rest of the money going?
Okay, first, that $90 million production budget. That's just to get the movie in the can, as they say.
So filming.
Yeah, that pays the actors, and Margot Robbie does not come cheap. That pays the camera crew, the catering, the costumes, the locations on the moors, all of that. It does not include P&A.
P&A.
Prints and advertising. Think about it. Did you see a billboard for this movie?
Everywhere. It was everywhere. I saw it on the side of buses. I got unskippable YouTube ads. I saw Margot Robbie on every single talk show sofa for the last 2 weeks.
Exactly. And that costs a fortune, an absolute fortune. For a global release of this size, with stars of this caliber, sources estimate the marketing spend is likely another $40 to $50 million minimum.
$50 million just for ads.
You have to buy that visibility. So now the movie doesn't cost $90 million. It costs roughly $140 million to exist in the marketplace.
Ouch. Okay, so the hole is much, much deeper.
It gets worse.
Of course it does.
When you buy a ticket for, say, $15 at your local AMC or Regal, Warner Bros.
Right.
Or Lucky Chap, they don't get that full $15.
Right. The theater has to keep the lights on and the popcorn.
Exactly. Domestically, here in North America, the studio usually keeps about 50% to 60% of the ticket price. So call it half.
Yeah.
Internationally, it's even lower. In a market like China, for example, the studio take can be as low as 25%. So that big, shiny $82 million global opening number, the studio is probably only seeing about $40 million of that in actual liquid cash coming back to them. Maybe a little more, but not much.
So let me do the napkin map here. They've spent roughly $140 million to make and market it.
Ballpark, yes.
And they've barely cleared $40 million in actual revenue so far.
Which means they are roughly $100 million in the hole as we speak.
Wow.
That is why the industry is calling this a bomb. Despite the pretty faces on the poster and the millions in the bank, they aren't just missing the mark. They are miles and miles away from profitability.
And that context is so important because it changes how we view the why of this movie, doesn't it?
Completely.
If it was a cheap $10 million indie film, they could take artistic risks, they could be weird. But when you are spending $140 million, you need a massive, massive audience. You need everyone from your grandmother to your teenage niece.
You need a 4-quadrant hit. And that brings us to the core tension of this entire deep dive.
Yep.
This movie was marketed as a massive, swoon-worthy romance to get those butts in seats. But is that actually what Wuthering Heights is? And maybe more importantly, is that what the director actually delivered? Because the disconnect between the marketing, the source material, and the final product, well, that seems to be where all this friction is coming from.
So let's get into the creative vision here. The director is Emerald Fennell. Now, I loved Promising Young Woman. I thought it was sharp, it was colorful, it was mean.
It was a great film, very pointed.
And then there was Saltburn, which was a viral moment, to say the least.
The viral moment is a very diplomatic way of putting. She is certainly a director with a signature style. You know a Fennell film when you see it. She is not known for playing it safe, and she is absolutely not known for subtlety.
No, not at all. And looking at the sources, she has been very open, very direct about her approach to Wuthering Heights. She's explicitly stated that this is not a faithful adaptation of Emily Bronte's novel.
She's all too proud of it.
She calls it a romanticized version.
That phrase, romanticized version, does a lot of heavy lifting.
It really does. I saw one interview where she basically said, this is the version of Wuthering Heights she imagined in her head when she was a young... It's like Wuthering Heights in quotation marks. It's a vibe-based adaptation.
The quotation marks concept is key here. I'm glad you brought that up. She's essentially admitting that this is a projection of her own psyche, and perhaps the modern psyche, onto the text, rather than a translation of the text itself.
It's a filter.
It's the story filtered through a very specific, very contemporary lens. And based on the reviews and the audience reaction, sources suggest that lens is heavily influenced by the book talk.
Right. And for the listeners who have somehow managed to stay off TikTok, and congratulations, by the way, I envy you. Book Talk is that massive community of readers on the app. It's huge.
It moves markets. It can make a 10-year-old book a bestseller overnight.
And a huge chunk of it is dedicated to romance novels, specifically spicy or explicit romance. There's a very specific there. Dark, brooding men, toxic relationships framed as desirable, and lots of smut.
Precisely. And that's what sources are calling this movie, the book talk smut version of the classic. It's tailored for a modern audience that wants that specific aesthetic. They want the look, the aesthetic of the Gothic, but they want the payoff of a modern erotic thriller.
But here's where the literary critics, and frankly anyone who read the book closer than just skimming the Cliff's Notes, start to pull their hair out. Because you made a point in the notes here that I want to drill into. Wuthering Heights is not a love story.
It is arguably the greatest, most pervasive misconception in all of English literature.
Say more about that, because I feel like in pop culture, Heathcliff and Cathy are held up as this ultimate romantic duo. Like people say, oh, I want to love like Heathcliff and Cathy.
If someone says they want to love like Heathcliff and Cathy, you should run. You should run in the opposite direction immediately.
Okay, noted.
This misconception has persisted for decades. You know, Kate Bush wrote a song about it. There have been other romantic adaptations, but this film seems to be doubling down on it to an extreme.
So what is it then?
The original novel is a tragedy. It's a horror story about obsession, about generational trauma, and about complete and utter self-destruction.
It's not about two people who just can't get the timing right like a rom-com.
No, not at all. It's about a woman, Cathy, who rejects a man, Heathcliff. And she doesn't reject him just because she's playing hard to get or something trivial. She rejects him due to rigid, unyielding social standing. Class. In the context of their upbringing, he is seen as a slave boy. He's a foundling, described as dark-skinned in the text, treated like a servant, and she is landed gentry.
So it's about a specific kind of cruelty, the cruelty of a class system. It's about her choosing social status over her soul.
Exactly. That's the tragedy. She marries another man, Edgar Linton, out of a sense of duty to her family name and her desire for social climbing. It's a political and social commentary on how the class system destroys human connection.
Well, what Fennell has done, according to the critics,
is she's stripped away that sociological context. She's vacuum sealed the story. She has taken the toxic obsession and reframed it as a swoon-worthy, desirable Valentine's Day romance.
One source described it pretty. They said the movie takes a story where a woman rejects a man, marries someone else for money, and then the rejected guy comes back rich, and they, and I'm quoting here, bone a few dozen times until everyone dies.
Which fundamentally misunderstands the entire point of the book. In the book, the lovers are kept apart. That is the engine of the story. The tension, the horror, the passion, it all comes from the fact that they cannot be together.
The unrequited nature of it?
Yes. By turning it into a film where they are constantly providing satisfaction to the audience by getting physical, you aren't just changing the plot. You are changing the entire genre. You're turning a Gothic tragedy into a modern, erotic drama.
And speaking of Emerald Fennell's style, sources point out that this isn't exactly new territory for her. There's a running critique that her previous work, like Saltburn, tries a little too hard to be weird and edgy.
The edgelord critique, yeah. It's followed her. In Saltburn, we had scenes involving menstrual blood and a grave site scene that were, let's just say, provocative for the sake of being provocative.
It felt designed for social media clips.
It felt like she is trying to shock the audience into paying attention rather than earning it. And it seems she has brought that same energy, that same desire to shock to the Yorkshire Moor.
Which leads us directly to the elephant in the room. Or maybe the dog. We have to talk about the scene.
The fireplace scene, yes.
I was scrolling through X, and I genuinely thought I was looking at a meme. I thought it was a fake screenshot created by AI. I saw Alison Oliver, who plays Isabella, on her hands and knees. She's chained to a fire. She's wearing a literal metal collar, and she is pant-dog.
It is a choice, a very bold.
And the captions were ruthless. I mean, people were calling it pet play, furry role play, booktop smut goes too far.
Yeah.
But help me understand. Is this in the book? I remember Wuthering Heights being dark, but I do not remember a BDSM dungeon.
No, it is. It is definitely not in the book. But this is a perfect, almost lab-grown example of what we call adaptation.
Okay.
So let's look at the source text. In Bronte's novel, there is a scene involving a dog, but it's horrifying for a completely different reason. Heathcliff hangs Isabella.
He kills her dog.
Yes, he murders her pet. It's a moment of pure, unadulterated cruelty. He does it to show her, I am a monster. I hate you. I will destroy everything you love because I can't have the one thing I want. It's a vicious act of violence. It is meant to make you repulsed.
Okay, that's incredibly dark. But in the movie, Emerald Fennell changed that act of violence into whatever this is.
She shifted it. She shifted it from literal violence against an animal to psychosexual humiliation of a woman. In the film, instead of hurting the dog, Heathcliff treats Isabella like the dog.
I see the logic, I guess, the metaphorical leap of, I will treat you like an animal, but the execution seems to be where people are losing their minds.
Because it crosses the line. It crosses the line from Gothic horror to kink. And this is where the listener feedback and the critics are really aligning. The critique is that by making Isabella bark and pant on a chain, you aren't showing her as a victim of abuse anymore. You're showing her as a participant in a fetish.
It sexualizes the abuse.
It sexualizes the trauma. That's the core issue. One source here put perfectly, they said, turning a girl who escapes horrific abuse into a BDSM sub is certainly a decision. Feels like it trivializes her actual trauma.
And in the book, she's a survivor, right?
She is. In the book, Isabella is a tragic figure, but she eventually finds the strength to escape Heathcliff. She runs away, has his child, and raises him on her own. She's a survivor. By putting her in a collar, the film risks making her look like she's enjoying it, or at least that the movie is enjoying looking at her in that position. It turns abuse into pet play.
But here is the part that really confused me. I'm looking at interviews with the cast. Jacob Elordi and Alison Oliver are defending this scene strongly.
They are. And this is a classic case of actor brain versus audience brain.
Explain actor brain.
So imagine you are Jacob Elordi. You're this methody, serious actor. You are trying to get into the head of a psychopath like Heathcliff. You're in your trailer thinking, how do I show that I'm desperate? How do I show that I've lost my mind and my humanity?
Okay.
To an actor, the idea of treating a human like a dog feels edgy and raw. It feels like a powerful metaphor for his madness.
So he's thinking about the metaphor, he's not thinking about the final visual.
Exactly. He's not thinking about how it will look out of context in a 15-second clip on Twitter. He told reporters he had fun with the scene because it showed Heathcliff's rabid desperation. He said it represents the hell they're all living in. He's thinking about the internal emotion of the character.
Right.
He isn't thinking about the 19-year-old girl in the audience who just sees a woman on a leash and thinks, wait, is this supposed to be sexy? Am I supposed to be into this?
It's a total disconnect. The actors are playing 4D chess with psychology, and the audience is just watching a game of checkers where someone is barking.
And Alison Oliver said something very similar. She said her character, Isabella, is repressed and infantilized. So when her emotions finally come out, they are messy and unorganized, which sure is a valid acting choice in a vacuum. But on a 40-foot screen, it reads as fetish content.
It also raises the internalized misogyny, which is a tricky one.
Very.
Because Emerald Fennell is a woman, there's this sort of built-in shield of, oh, it can't be misogynistic, a woman direct.
That is a very common defense you see online. But sources are pushing back on that, and I think rightly so.
Yeah.
They argue that internalized misogyny is very real. Just because a woman is behind the camera doesn't mean she can't perpetuate images that degrade women.
Right.
Some critics are saying Fennell is owning the inaccuracy, but in doing so, she's stripping Isabella of her dignity and her agency just for a shock value shot.
This leads us to the biggest philosophical beef I have with this movie. And honestly, with a lot of movies lately, it feels like we've forgotten how to be sexy.
Tell me more.
Well, everyone in this movie is objectively gorgeous. They are constantly touching, grabbing, boning, to quote that review again.
Hmm.
But I don't feel anything watching the clips. It's just mechanics. It feels like I'm watching a biologist, not a romance.
You have hit on something that sociologists and film critics are calling the erosion of eroticism, or if you want the internet term for it, the death of edging.
Okay, explain the death of edging in a way that I can explain to my mother without getting slapped.
Okay, I'll do my best. Think about the most romantic moment in a Jane Austen. Let's take the 2005 Pride and Prejudice with Keira Knightley. What is the sexiest moment in that entire film?
Oh, that's easy. It's the hand flex.
Huh?
When Mr. Darcy helps Elizabeth into the carriage, he touches her bare hand for maybe 1 second, walks away, and then flexes his hand like it's burning.
Exactly. He touches her hand. That's it. There's no nudity, no kissing, just a hand touch. But it feels absolutely electric. Why?
Because they can't have each other. Because society won't let them. Because they're repressed.
Because of the gap. There is a famous quote by the psychoanalyst Jacques Lacan. He said, "We do not actually desire people or things. We desire to desire."
We desire to desire. So we like the feeling of wanting something more than we like the thing itself.
Precisely. Eroticism lives in the space between you and the thing you want. It lives in the obstacle. In Wuthering Heights, the book, the obstacle is massive. It's insurmountable. Class, money, marriage, death. They're kept apart. That pressure builds and builds and builds until it explodes. The not having is what makes it hot.
And in this new movie.
In this new movie, the sources say they are hooking up constantly. There's no gap. There is no obstacle to overcome. The movie gives you the payoff immediately, over and over again.
It's like eating dessert for dinner. It sounds great, but after the first bite, you just feel kind of sick. And
That's a perfect analogy. The sources compare it to modern horror movies versus classic horror. Remember the opening of Scream with Drew Barrymore?
iconic. The popcorn on the stove, the phone calls.
Right. The Jiffy Pop is expanding, the phone keeps ringing, the killer is taunting her. It takes 10, 15 minutes of pure, unadulterated dread before anything physical actually happens. The fear comes from the anticipation.
And modern horror is often just jump scare, loud noise, gore, immediate gratification, less buildup.
Correct. We have, as a culture, lost the patience for the buildup. We want the shock immediately. And this version of Wuthering Heights is treating romance like a jump scare. It's throwing nudity and dog collars at you because it doesn't trust you to sit still for the hand flex.
That is actually kind of depressing. It's like the movie thinks we all have fried dopamine receptors from our phones and can't handle a slow burn anymore.
It thinks we are, to use that terrible internet slang, gooners. It assumes the audience just wants raw visual stimulation, not emotional engagement. It assumes you are scrolling on TikTok while watching the movie, so it needs to scream at you to get your eyes up from your phone.
The sources also used a pro wrestling analogy, which I thought was brilliant.
Yes. Stick with me on this one because it really works. Old school wrestling from the 80s used ring psychology. They simulated a fight, and the drama came from the story they told with their bodies, selling the pain, the fatigue, the desperation. They would hold a headlock for 2 minutes to build the crowd's anticipation for the escape.
It was storytelling.
It was pure storytelling. And now,
No.
largely due to shorter attention spans since the 2000s, you have smaller, more athletic wrestlers doing incredibly dangerous stunts right from the opening bell. There's no buildup. It's just, look at this crazy flip, look at this table crash. It's spectacular, but it lacks the narrative weight. The story is gone.
So Wuthering Heights is the table crash of period dramas. It's trying to keep your attention by being loud and shocking because it doesn't trust story to do the work.
That is a very, very apt summary.
Let's talk about the people tasked with selling this table crash. We've got Margot Robbie and Jacob Elordi. Now, sources are saying the chemistry weird.
It is an interesting pairing. There is a noticeable age gap. Margot Robbie is older than Jacob Elordi. Now, in a vacuum, that shouldn't matter at all.
No.
But sources suggest that in the film, the dynamic feels less like passionate, chaotic soulmate and almost like a mother figure dynamic or an aunt with her nephew.
Which is definitely not the vibe you want for Heathcliff and Kathy. Heathcliff is supposed to be this wild, dangerous, almost demonic force of nature. If he looks like a college kid hanging out with a glamorous older woman, it changes the power dynamic completely.
They're supposed to be equals, spirits cut from the same cloth.
Yeah.
She famously says, "I am Heathcliff." They are two halves of the same soul. But beyond the chemistry, there's the Barbie factor.
Right. Margot Robbie is iconoclastic as Barbie now. It's hard to unsee it. She is literal perfection.
And that plays directly into the aesthetics of this film. In the novel, Catherine Earnshaw represents darkness. She is wild. She runs on the moors. She gets dirty and muddy. She has wild, dark hair. She is a creature of the earth.
And Margot Robbie in this film
Remains blonde. She looks polished, perfectly coiffed.
This might sound like I'm nitpicking, like, oh, the hair is wrong. But the expert analysis in our sources says this actually matters a lot. It's not just hair.
It does. It's about thematic consistency. It's about visual storytelling. If a character is written to embody the chaotic, dark, untamed forces of nature, giving her the aesthetic of a polished, blonde Hollywood star, essentially Barbie on the moors, it fundamentally undermines the symbolism.
It's a contradiction.
It is. The sources compare it to the debates around, say, race-swapping a character like Snape in the upcoming Harry Potter series. It's not just about what the actor looks like on the surface, it's about whether they capture the core essence of the character described in the text. And Kathy's dark is essential.
It feels like they were afraid to make Margot Robbie ugly or messy, even when she's screaming and throwing things. Perfect.
And that is the modern clean girl aesthetic from social media bleeding into cinema. Everyone has perfect skin, perfect teeth, perfect hair, even when they're supposed to be dying of consumption in a 19th century farmhouse. But Wuthering Heights is a story about dirt, blood, and goat. It shouldn't look like a skincare.
We also can't ignore the power dynamics behind the scenes here either. Margot Robbie isn't just the star, she is the producer.
Correct. Her production company, Lucky Chap, is behind. And let's be realistic, this movie does not get a $90 million budget without her attached. She is the engine making this entire thing happen.
And this fits into a broader trend sources are noticing in Hollywood, right? The push for older women with younger men narratives?
Yes, very much so. References were made to Nicole Kidman's recent role in a film called Baby, and of course Anne Hathaway in The Idea of You. There seems to be a commercial appetite, or at least a studio belief in an appetite for established A-list actresses pairing with the current it-up boys of Gen Z.
It's almost like fan service for a specific demographic of women who grew up watching these actors.
It's likely a mix of that and the actresses themselves wanting to work with exciting new talent. But in this case, it feels like they shoehorned that very modern dynamic into a classic story where it doesn't quite. The power balance is all wrong for Kathy.
So bringing it all back to the why. Why make this way? Is it just a cash grab? Is it that cynical?
That is the cynical, but, well, perhaps accurate argument from the source. Is this a film exploring the depths of human misery and the constraints of class? Or is it a cynical attempt to capture the millennial and Gen Z book talk demographic?
The sources called it goon material, which is a very harsh term.
It is, but it implies content designed purely for immediate, visceral visual stimulation rather than intellectual or emotional engagement.
Yeah.
The studio likely knows that the modern audience isn't looking for the cerebral political philosophy of Bronte's writing, the stuff about duty versus love, land ownership, and class struggle. They suspect the audience just wants the aesthetic of Wuthering Heights with the plot of a spicy romance novel. They want the GIFs, not the text.
But let's play devil's advocate for a second. Does accuracy actually matter? I mean, really. The sources brought up the Titanic defense, which I think is fascinating.
This is a great counter, really important. People love James Cameron's Titanic. It is one of the most successful movies of all time. But if you look at the character of Rose objectively,
She's kind of awful. I mean, she's a bit of a bad person.
well, look at the fact. She cheats on her fiancé. She completely ignores her family's impending financial ruin. And at the very end, she throws a diamond worth generational wealth into the ocean while telling her family to essentially F off. She acts largely on selfish impulse.
And she lets Jack freeze. We all know there was room on that door.
The door debate will never die. It will outlive us all. But does the audience care about her morality or the logic?
No, not at all.
No, because the movie connects emotionally. It sweeps you up in the epic romance of it all.
Exactly. If the movie makes you cry, if it makes you feel something powerful, you forgive the plot. You forgive the fact that Rose should have probably sold the diamond and donated the money to charity or helped her family.
Right. So the argument is, if this new Wuthering Heights succeeds as a love story, if it makes teenagers and young adults swoon in the theater, then the infidelity to the book won't matter to the general audience. History is written by the winner, and box office hits define the cultural memory of a story. If this movie was a smash hit, this would become the definitive version for a generation.
But it's not a hit. As we established right at the top, it's a bomb. So the Titanic defense doesn't really work if the ship sinks at the box office, too.
Touché. That is the critical difference, isn't it? Titanic worked because the chemistry between the leads was undeniable, and the storytelling, however flawed, was epic. Here, the consensus seems to be that they swung for the fences and missed the ball entirely.
It's also worth noting that the romance genre itself, specifically the erotic thriller or the straight big-budget romance, kind of dead in theaters. We just don't get movies like Love Story from the 70s or even something like The Girl Next Door from the early 2000s anymore.
That's absolutely true. At some point, the studio stopped taking risks on mid-budget romance films that weren't comedies. So in a way, Warner Bros. And Lucky Chap are taking a gamble here, similar to what Paramount did in the 1970s. They are betting that people still want to see beautiful people falling in love or at least in lust, on a big screen.
Even if they have to put a dog collar on them to get our attention.
Even then, they're trying to shock the system back into life.
So let's recap where we are. We have a movie that's hemorrhaging money. Remember, they need something like $140 million, and they're not even close. We have a pet play controversy that has alienated the literary purists and just confused the casuals. And we have a huge philosophical shift from a story about longing to a story about having.
It is a mixed bag, to put it very, very lightly, and the reviews reflect that. Some people say it's exactly what modern audiences want. It's fast, it's sexy, it's visually stunning. And then others call it a soulless remake that strips the identity and the very soul of a classic novel.
It is just wild to me to think that a 200-year-old story about toxic, self-destructive people who hate each other half the time is being marketed as the ultimate Valentine's date movie.
It says a lot about how we interpret romance today, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
We have confused obsession with love, and we have confused explicit content with intimacy. We think showing everything means feeling everything, and I think this film is a perfect case study.
And that leads me to a question that I want you, the listener, to think about today. It's something that has been bugging me as I started watching this.
What's that?
If we only consume art that removes all the tension, if we demand that our movies give us the kiss or the sex scene immediately without any of the buildup, are we actually killing our ability to feel desire?
That is a profound question. Is the book talk version of the world, this world of instant gratification, erasing the value of waiting? Are we training ourselves to be impatient lovers and impatient viewers?
Think about that the next time you scroll past a 10-second clip of a movie and think you've seen the whole thing. Do you prefer the burn of the unknown, the slow ache of wanting something, or do you just want the shock?
It's a question worth asking. Sometimes the most romantic thing is the thing you can't touch, the wanting.
Thanks for taking the deep dive with us. We'll catch you on the next one.